generations to come.
Welcome to another edition of the TDN Writers Room podcast. My name is Bill Finley. I'm a correspondent for the TDN. I also co-host the Down the Stretch radio show with Dave Johnson on SiriusXM Radio.
How y'all doing? I'm Randy Moss with NBC Sports. I am not at my normal location with Lucy behind me. I'm actually on my balcony at a hotel in the Big Island of Hawaii, where I was here for a wedding this past weekend. So things could be a lot worse, Bill and Zoe.
And it could. The weather looks a lot nicer there. That looks absolutely fabulous. It is positively pissing down here. We were actually supposed to do this earlier, and the Wi-Fi went out at Dan Ross's house. So Sue was like, "Oh, just nip home." I'm like, "Sue, it's raining and it's LA traffic. There is no nipping home to do anything about it." So I'm sorry if I missed your interview with Brook Smith a little bit earlier.
Well, Zoe, we're glad to have you. And Randy, thank you for taking some time out from your fabulous stay in Hawaii to take part in the show. All right, guys, let's get right into it. Last weekend, a big weekend of Derby and Oaks preps, highlighted by the Risen Star Stakes. I think the story here is that after Fierceness didn't run well in the Holy Bull, after the Baffert debacle, we're all looking for who the heck is the horse to beat, or who the heck is the favorite in the Kentucky Derby. I think after the Risen Star, we have that horse now. It's Sierra Leone. Will he win the Derby? I have no idea. But, I think he belongs at number one on everybody's list. Fabulously well-bred, the Coolmore team, etc. Sat behind a slow pace, came from back, and, didn't blow away Track Phantom by 10 lengths, but he beat a horse, Track Phantom, who actually had a pretty soft trip, I thought, on the front end with slow fractions. Got a 90 buyer. Yeah, he's number one on my list, Randy.
Yeah, I would agree. We'll see if anything really steps up in some of the other prep races. It's not the kind of performance that would, sort of blow you away or anything like that. But, given the way Fierceness ran and the way some of the other Derby preps other than Nisos have popped up, this horse will probably have to be the so-called leader in the clubhouse right now. He's got the Bluegrass Stakes coming up next, according to the current plan. We'll hear from Brook Smith, the co-owner, a little bit later. What I liked about him the most is what you just mentioned, Bill, the slow pace. 49 and something for a mile and an eighth on a sloppy racetrack. He finished in about 23 and 2/5 seconds for his final quarter mile, which is racehorse time to close. And, he's going to be the kind of horse that is going to be vulnerable to traffic and things like that, given his running style. But, Zoe, there's not really much you can nitpick about that performance.
Absolutely not. The blinkers worked a treat. They didn't get him any closer. He was still a long way back. And like you said, with bigger fields, he's going to have to overcome the traffic. Is he fast enough? I don't know. The 90 and the 91 bias speed figures don't really jump off the page. Everyone's just going to be wanting to know about Nisos. He's not as quick as Nisos. His numbers aren't as flashy as Nisos. Does he look like he'll get a mile and a quarter? Absolutely. But every horse in the world can get a mile and a quarter. Is he fast enough to get a mile and a quarter? The good-looking horse, that is for sure. I still stand by the fact he's the best-looking yearling that I've ever seen. And I hope he goes on to prove it and do big things. Chad Brown has mapped out a plan that has worked. I actually read T.D. Thornton's piece in the TDN, and he said about going to the Bluegrass and the success that Chad Brown has had with 2 wins, 3 seconds, and 1/3. But it just begs me to wonder, Chad was so sure this horse needed 11 weeks. Okay, so he had 11 weeks off and that worked. And then he's going to run in the Bluegrass, which is a month, 5 weeks to the Kentucky Derby. Now, the 50 points is probably going to garner him a position already, so the pressure's not on. But you don't want to run last in the Bluegrass or have a really hard race if you're used to running with 11 weeks between your races. That is the only thing that jumps off the page. And then according to T.D. Thornton, horses with only 2 sophomore starts going into the first Saturday in May since 2017 are a combined 0 for 39. So TD went down the rabbit hole. You didn't have to, Randy, because you were in Hawaii, sipping pina coladas. But
Yeah, all those rules are going to get blown up, though. Horses aren't campaigned the way, every year it seems like they're campaigned a little more sparingly, much to Bill Finley's chagrin. I say you can't really nitpick Sierra Leone, but he's obviously going to have to run a lot faster than he ran in the Risen Star if he's going to be a Kentucky Derby winner. Now, the pace of the Risen Star doesn't really lend itself to a fast speed figure, whether it be Buyers or Ragozins or Thoroughgraphs. He's not going to jump off the page in that respect. So he's going to have to step up his game there. But so far, I mean, he looks like the kind of horse that will improve with extra distance. We just don't know how much. We'll find out later.
Randy, what you just mentioned, though, the 90 Buyer is fine, but it's not, as Zoe said, is an eye-opening. But with no Nisos or any of the Baffert horses being involved in the Kentucky Derby, and, the jury's still out on fierceness, who's faster? If he's, that's the thing.
I mean, right now, nobody. Right? I mean, Track Phantom had everything his own way on the front end, had an off track, controlled the pace, nice slow pace, ran well, but you can't really be confident that as the distances stretch out, given the way he ran against Sierra Leone, that he's going to be able to be as good. Locke is supposed to run in the Fountain of Youth. Dornoch is supposed to run in the Fountain of Youth March the 5th, so we'll see if those horses step up. But right now, even though he's only got mediocre speed figures, that's why he's the future favorite for the last round of future wagering for the Derby.
So on the same card was the Rachel Alexandra for the 3-year-old fillies getting ready to head down the road to the Kentucky Oaks. The winner was Tarifa, who scored a mild upset over Intricate. She also got a 90 Buyer, so she got the same figure as Sierra Leone. I thought she looked really good, and I think that she is going to be very strong going forward. Just one other thing I'd like to add. You can't escape this. Tarifa goes into the gate at 6-1, crosses the wire at 5-2. Thank you, computer guys. Thank you, horse racing, for making a winning bet a sour experience for anybody that bet on her. But, that's a problem we've been talking about forever, and I don't know if we're going to come up with any solutions. Brad Cox is such a good trainer to begin with, but he is really good, really, really good with 3-year-old fillies. This was his second straight win in the Rachel Alexandra. He's won 3 of the last 4, and he's got more in the tank, too. He's got a couple other really nice fillies going down the road to the Kentucky Oaks. So Tarifa, two thumbs up for me.
An embarrassment of riches for the Brad Cox barn. She looked good. Pratt rode her well. You've got to feel for Flo, who took off her to ride Alpine Princess, who really didn't run at all. She didn't really run her race. So you feel for that. We'll see if Pratt manages to keep the mount on Tarifa. But she looked good. I don't know if she's the Oaks winner, but she certainly looked good.
Yeah, I mean, sitting here on my balcony in Hawaii, if I had a computer hookup and they were going to the gate and I saw she was 6-1, I would have hammered her too.
Right.
I mean, she was coming off a race at the fairgrounds, an allowance race, I think it was, where she got an 86 Buyer speed figure, 3 wide on both turns. Okay, so you got to boost it a little bit given the ground loss, and now she's got the number 1 post in the Rachel Alexandra. So she's going to save ground at least on 1 turn. As it turned out, she saved ground on both turns. So that's why a horse like that can go from an 86 Buyer speed figure to a 90 and win convincingly. I mean, I figured it was going to take a big effort to beat her. I thought Intricate was probably good enough to do it. It turns out she wasn't. But I mean, just like Sierra Leone right now would be the early favorite as we sit here taping this for the Derby until somebody else jumps up. I think you can say the same thing about Tarifa and the Kentucky Oaks.
Randy, we haven't seen her run yet this year, but just FYI is obviously a big part of the conversation. I've had her at number 1 on my Road to the Kentucky Oaks list for the TDN. I'm going to put Tarifa ahead of her this week because, again, we're talking about figures. Just FYI, as accomplished as she is, she didn't run fast. I mean, we're talking about, that 90 Buyer isn't a huge deal. Well, I don't think she's broken out of the 70s. So, that's why I think I agree with you, Tarifa deserves to be considered now the favorite for the Derby.
I would have done exactly the same thing. Definitely.
All right. Let's head to Sunland Park, where on Sunday they had the Sunland Derby. They moved this race, didn't they? Didn't it used to be later on in the year?
End of March, like March 26th. So they moved it, yeah.
Right. So the winner is Stronghold by 2.5 lengths. A couple storylines here. Phil D'Amato. Don't think of him as ever having a horse on the road to the Kentucky Derby. A matter of fact, he has never run in the Kentucky Derby, as accomplished trainer as he is, because he's a grass guy. This horse was good enough to finish second behind Nisos and the Bob Hope, but was beaten 8 3/4 lengths. And Zoe, you say that the owners, Rich and Sharon Waller, are pretty cool people. Tell us about them.
They are so much fun to be around. They've been breeding horses for 20, 30 years. This is the third generation through this family. Now, I was very familiar with Spectator, who was a very quick filly for trainer Phil D'Amato. And she actually died foaling Stronghold, which was a terrible shame. Stronghold, a big, massive, big-hipped foal by Ghost Zapper. You should try and search out a picture of him as a foal. He looked like a baby Clydesdale. He was so thick. I can see exactly why they named him Stronghold. But Rick and Sharon comes to track every weekend. She bakes cookies. She brings cookies. She's got a red lipstick on, all her rings. She's just absolutely fabulous. And they actually came to Santa Anita on Sunday. And how do I put this? I asked them, why did you not go to watch your homebred run at Sunland? Because it was early on. And I'm like, why aren't you at Sunland? They're like, we're going to watch him here. She said, because both of us last night couldn't get off the toilet and we weren't getting on a plane this morning. She didn't quite phrase it as that. It kind of ended in SH1T. Those were her exact words. And I was just dying. I was sitting on the set. I said, okay, so that's why you didn't get on the plane. She's like, no, we feel much better today. Here's some cookies. And they watched it from the track. Absolutely delighted to see this horse win. Is he going to win the Derby? I don't know. He needs to run in a bit more of a straighter line than he's done in each of his 2 starts, but he was best of the rest in that.
Zoe, that story you just told us goes under the category of too much information.
Oh, hold on. And I got one more. Hold on. There's never too much information.
There's no such thing, Bill, for Zoe, right? No, there's no TMI in her world, right? So
this is Kelly Leak, who I owned a piece of, winning the Sunland Derby in 2009 when he beat who? Randy Moss.
Mind That Bird?
Randy Moss needs to know this because he got it wrong.
Mind That Bird.
Ah! 10 points
to Randy Moss.
All right. You would have got it anyways.
And just like Kelly Leak, if the Kentucky Derby were run this weekend, Stronghold would be about 35 or 40 to 1, right?
And we did not take Kelly Leak to the Kentucky Derby because we did not think he was that kind of horse. So that just goes to show you.
I always love the name Kelly Leak because, of course, that's named after the character in The Bad News Bear. So whoever came up with that name for that horse, a good job.
Yeah, he's in Tehachapi, retired, running around in the snow. So big thumbs up to Maggie Moss for sending him to me after he retired. The TDN Writers' Room is brought to you by Keeneland. Keeneland ticket sales kick off today for the upcoming spring meet to be held April the 5th through the 26th. We have a variety of ticket options for dining, grandstand, reserve seating, and general admission are all available. All tickets are required to be purchased in advance via Keeneland's official online ticket office at tickets.keeneland.com/racing. This year, Keeneland will award a record, listen to this, guys, $8.1 million for 19 stakes, headlined by the 100th running of the $1 million Toyota Bluegrass Stakes, a Grade 1 event on Saturday, April the 6th. Most likely the next place we will see Sierra Leone. Other Grade 1 races for the spring meet include the Central Bank Ashland, the Madison, the Maker's Mark, and the Jenny Wiley, each worth $600,000 each. We'll be right back after this message from Keeneland.
At Keeneland, a horse will always be measured in hands. Hands that see, that sense, that speak. hands that hold our sport to a higher standard. Not for our sake, but for theirs. For the love of the horse, for generations to come.
This week's Fastest Horse of the Week is brought to you by Audible, one of the fast sires at Windstar Farm, who had another stakes winner this past weekend at Aqueduct in the Maddie May Stakes. That would be a filly by the name of My Main Squeeze, who was winning her third straight. Audible now leads all second crop sires in 2024 by earnings, black type winners, graded stakes winners, and wins. Of course, Audible was one of the more consistent 3-year-olds of his generation, never off the board in 5 stakes races, including 3 stakes wins, Florida Derby, and the Holy Bull. A couple of those. Audible stands at Windstar for $15,000. This week's Fastest Horse of the Week, it took place at Laurel on Saturday in the General George Stakes at 7 furlongs. 4-year-old colt by the name of Post Time, who has already racked up a pretty remarkable record. He won the General George by 3 lengths, Beyer speed figure of 103. Post Time is the son of Frosted, owned by the Hillwood Stable, trained by Brittany Russell, who has now won 7 of his 8 lifetime starts, all in one-turn races, and now back-to-back Beyer speed figures of 104 in the Jennings at Laurel in January, and now the 103 in the General George that makes him this week's Fastest Horse of the Week.
So there's still about 2.5 months left before the Kentucky Derby. So we're going to try to do the impossible, pick the Derby winner right now. I don't pick the Derby winner on the first Saturday in May. How am I going to pick the Derby winner on the third Tuesday in February? But a couple things. So you look at these Derby future wagers, and I can't say this enough. That is the worst bet in the history of horse racing. How anybody can bet that thing is nuts. Sierra Leone's a perfectly good horse. I understand. He's 6-1 in the future wager. I think if the race were run tomorrow, he'd be 6-1. And then he's got about a 50-50 chance that any of these horses get hurt. So save your money, folks. I don't really get it. Okay. After saying all that, I am going to pick out one horse, though. If you like Sierra Leone, how do you not like Dornoch, who beat him in the Remsen and also did it very gamely, came back at the end when it looked like Sierra Leone had the race won. Danny Gargan has been, before this horse ever even ran, said it was the best horse he's ever trained. So I reserve the right to change my mind at least 25 times between now and Derby Day. But okay, on February 20th, if I called it right, we're going to give me some credit after the Derby. Dornoch, my Derby winner right now.
Do you think the Derby gods will allow that? 2 half brothers to win the Derby?
That's right. Yeah. That would be really cool if that were to happen. Yeah. Of course, yes, he's a full brother to Mage.
Yeah. Gosh, it's a hard one. I mean, right now I'd have to go with Sierra Leone just because I can't really think of anyone else, to be perfectly honest, other than the ones that can't run in the Derby. So I'd have to go with him and be terribly boring at 6-1. What about you, Randy?
I'm not sure if he's good enough, and he was well beaten in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile, but I liked him kind of right off the bat last year at Saratoga. Todd Pletcher, horse called Locked. So I'll see if he's going to move up in the Fountain of Youth. He's going to need to move up. Timberlake was tempting. I'm not sure he wants to go 1.25 miles. So out of all the ones we've seen so far, then there may be some others lying in the bushes right now, but I'll throw Locked out there, and maybe he'll be 10 or 15-1 right now.
All right. So how about the Kentucky Oaks? I think we talked about the most likely winner already on the show. Again, all things being equal, it's all relative trying to do this on February 20th. But I think really like Tarifa's race in the Rachel Alexandra. And, again, I talked about how good Brad Cox is with these 3-year-old fillies. Just FYI is slow. I haven't seen anybody else this year that really took my breath away. So maybe I can hit the daily double of Dornoch and Tarifa. How about that? Zoe?
I am going to go against everything I just said about Sierra Leone and him having slow Beyer speed figures and stick with Just FYI. And the reason I'm doing this, because As a 3-year-old, I think she'll finally get the chance to grow into that big, beautiful frame of hers. She's a big filly. She should never have won at first asking, going 5.5 or 6 furlongs, whatever it was, at Saratoga that day. And I believe that the slow buyer speed figures are just purely for the fact that she wasn't ready for them. I think we are going to see a bigger, stronger version of Just FYI, whose buyer speed figures are going to improve dramatically when we see her come to the fray. She's already had 5 or 6 works down there at Payson. She's been training really, really well. And does anyone know where she's going to run next?
Yeah, the Devona Dale.
Okay. I can't wait to see her. I would love to be down there and see her in the flesh just to see how she looks, because she's always had that huge frame, and it's just sheer guts and determination and some class and some athleticism that got her to win when she won last year. So I'm sticking with her. I absolutely love her.
All right. And I know I just said that Tarifa, belongs as the early Kentucky Oaks favorite based on what she did at the fairgrounds. She did everything the right way. She set inside. She probably took a little bit of kickback on a sloppy track day. She did get a good trip. Nice turn of foot turning for home. But look, if we would say that Kinza would be a pretty solid favorite for the Oaks if she were allowed to run, trained by Bob Baffert, I thought Copion, Richard Mandela's horse, ran admirably chasing Kinza last time out at Santa Anita. So right now, I'll take Copion as my Kentucky Oaks horse, even though I thought Tarifa looked really good.
Right. So some sad news this week. Just yesterday, it was announced that Echo Zulu had to be put down. Remember, she was injured while preparing for the Breeders' Cup. She got cast in her stall and injured herself when she tried to get back on her feet. And Randy, I'll let you take this one away, because I think more than anybody else, you really appreciated how good this filly was. She was a 4-time Grade 1 winner, won stakes at 2, 3, and 4. But I think a lot of the reasons why you put her in such high esteem was going back to the buyer figures. She was a very, very fast horse. And I know you said that you voted for her over Goodnight Olive in the female sprint division. But, Randy, she had an abbreviated campaign this year, and I don't know if they would have run her next year if she didn't get injured or not. So we didn't see I shouldn't say that. We got a nice 2, 3, and 4-year-old campaign out of her. But put it all in perspective. How good was this filly?
Very, very fast. In fact, Steve Asmussen has said that it might be, just in terms of sheer speed, the fastest horse that he's ever trained. And he's had some pretty darn fast horses over the years, right? And I just feel so sorry for the connections of this horse. The horse itself, obviously. But, when she got hurt preparing for the Breeders' Cup, Asmussen was pretty emotional about it. Not just because she's a fast racehorse, but because her personality around the barn. Apparently very kind, very sweet, just a fantastic horse to be around, an easy horse to like. And you try, these trainers try not to get attached to the horses, but, sometimes it's just impossible. And even after her injury, when he talked about her recovery, he would start to get a little bit emotional talking about it. It's just the nature of her injury, right? No one ever felt comfortable. We talked about it. Right? So far, so good, but it's a long road. So many things can happen. These horses are so fragile. And it's just sad that she got as far as she got. And then, Zoe, something like this happens where she gets cast in her stall, and then it all just goes up in smoke. It's really, really a sad thing.
Absolutely gut-wrenching. When I heard the news yesterday, I've got to be honest, I shed a tear. It was just gut-wrenching because, I'm based out here. I went and visited her when she was in her stall before she went to Chino, which did a marvelous job down there. Dr. Ryan Carpenter, the best in the game, did the surgery on her right here at Santa Anita. And they took her down there, and she was just a wonderful patient. Love him or hate him, Scott Blasi has lovers and haters everywhere, but he went down every single day after training while they had those Breeders' Cup horses here to go and see her, to give her carrots, to go and visit her When Steve came out, he went down. They spent hours with her. She got the best care possible, and just gut wrenching. And, you made such a compelling case. I had not submitted my Eclipse Award votes before we did that podcast. I was going to wait till after, just because I wanted to take one final look and be sure. I changed my vote and voted for Echo Zulu. There were 70 votes for her for champion sprinter and 142 for Goodnight Olive. And I'm pleased to say I was one of the 70. She was just a true champion in every single sense of the word.
The TDN Writers Room, also brought to you by the Pennsylvania Horse Breeders Association. Big news this week for the biggest PA bred stars of 2023. First of all, Angel of Empire was named the top Mid-Atlantic bred of 2023. Congratulations to his breeders. Forgotten Land Investment, Inc. and Black Diamond Equine, and owner Albaugh Stables from Iowa. Then you've got Caravel and Nimitz Class, who made 3 out of the top 4 horses Pennsylvania breds. Speaking of Caravel, the TDN's Katie Petruniak has reported that she has now been purchased by John Stewart's Resolute Farm. Remember when he was the Green Group Guest of the Week? And Caravel will now be headed overseas for a date with none other than Frankel. We'll be right back after this message from the PHBA.
The state of Pennsylvania has the best breeders program in the entire United States.
When you buy a yearling, it's a little bit like buying a lottery ticket. And we are trying to provide the lottery ticket that the likelihood is to hit the jackpot.
Angel of Empire wins the Arkansas Derby and wins it clear.
Uncle Heavy late, it's a photo finish.
Pennsylvania and the PHBA have the best state-bred program in the country, bar none.
The winner, Uncle Heavy. He's a 3-year-old bred in Pennsylvania.
Every sire hopes to have a son to follow in his footsteps.
An impressive debut.
For Munnings, that son is Jack Christopher.
Jack Christopher to win the Champagne.
Unbeaten Grade 1 winner at 2. Dual Grade 1 winner at 3.
And he is pouring it on here. It is Jack Christopher winning the Grade 1 H. Allen Jerkins Memorial.
Jack Christopher.
It's time for the Coolmore Stallion of the Week, and this week that is Jack Christopher. Last week we had some of Cornisha's first foals to show you. Here are some of Jack Christopher's. First, a filly out of Court Dancer. The mare is a stakes winner and earner of just under $500,000. Here is a filly out of Honest Outlaw, first foal out of a Gunrunner half-sister to 2 graded stakes winners. Then we have a colt out of Laurel Canyon, the first foal out of a stakes place mare. And here is a filly out of My Fast One, who's 2-year-old by Justify, sold for $400,000 last year. And finally, a filly out of Second Coming, who is now a half-sister to champion Are You Kidding Me? The foal was bred by G. Watts Humphrey, the breeder of many a Grade 1 winner. Hey, Zoe, any thoughts on these foals?
Well, honestly, Bill, I'm looking at them right now, and I have to tell you that I am really liking what I'm seeing. Jack Christopher was kind of a bull of a racehorse. If you saw him on the racetrack, he was a very muscular, big, good-looking horse. And these fillies that I'm looking at right now got a little bit of length, got some scope, and got some leg, which is the thing that I am really looking for from the Jack Christopher babies. Looks like we've got a bunch of long-leggy fillies here, which gives me a big thumbs up for Jack Christopher babies.
Jack Christopher, the multiple Grade 1 winner, stands at Coolmore for $40,000.
It is now halftime in our weekly podcast, and every week that means it's time to tell you that the TDN is also brought to you by the Green Group, a tax accounting and advisory firm specializing in the thoroughbred industry.
And we welcome in now the Green Group guest of the week. It is none other than Brook Smith. Also goes by the name of Bourbon Brook. We'll talk about why he calls himself that. Very nice person who donates tons of money to charities in horse racing. But he was in the news this past weekend as one of the co-owners of both Sierra Leone and Hall of Fame, who went in the Risen Star Stakes. Brooke, welcome to the podcast. How did you get involved with Coolmore? I can't imagine that they are someone who are out looking for owners, or, how do you get into the fold with them?
Great question. So I've been in horse racing, I don't know, I guess time flies, maybe the last 15 or 20 years, more so the last 5 or 10. And been in the insurance business, kind of an unusual facet of insurance called surety. Short story is I met some younger folks, younger to me, mid-30s, who were working in the event insurance space and the sports and entertainment space, a group called 1783 based in London. And one of my old business partners said, hey, these guys are doing some interesting things. You should meet them. And we ended up becoming their partners and funded them a little bit. And it just so happened that one of the kind of the three principals in that was a guy named Charlie Pearson, who is the son-in-law of John Magner. So after we spent some time together, we got to know each other. They're great folks, good friends, and started doing some business together and had a bit of success. One thing led to another, and I kind of was introduced to the Coolmore ecosystem, I guess is the best way to put it. First through Kentucky. I've been to Ireland. Their breeding farming operation in Ireland, second to none. And, they're amazing people. They're wildly successful. And somewhere along the way, they said, well, would you be interested in maybe becoming one of our partners? And I said, wow, that's a heck of an opportunity. I know you guys, play at the top, and maybe it's an opportunity for someone like myself to take a bite of a horse, a yearling, perhaps, that I wouldn't normally even think about. And so I remember I was actually flying to Europe, and I was on a plane right as this Saratoga September sale was going on, the select sale in 22. And Adrian Wallace there was texting me saying, okay, we're going to look at a couple of these yearlings. And the first one I think that maybe came up was Sierra Leone. And he's texting me, this horse could, be $1 million or more. And then I'm getting texts like, $1.6 million, $1.8 million, are you in? And I'm hitting, yes, and so that's kind of how it started. And then at that same sale, of course, they also bought what is today Hall of Fame. And to have two horses come out of one sale, spending money on these nice horses obviously is because of their breeding and their conformation and their athleticism and everything you would hope to see. But to have two of them that were purchased in one sale like that, and to have them in the middle of everything is quite amazing, to be honest. So there's a short version.
Well, Brook, before we dive into the nitty-gritty on the horses, give us a little bit of your personal background, how you got involved in the sport to begin with, why, how your interest in it first got piqued. I know you run horses under Rocket Ship Racing as well. Tell us about all that.
Yeah, it's anything that has like such history to it. These horses, they don't run but a minute or two, but everything that happens around the track, the farms, the people, the history. I marvel at stuff like that. When I was in my 30s, 20 years ago plus, I had a friend whose father bought into a syndicate. Had a filly that was actually running in, I think it was the Humana Distaff at the time. Horse's name was Loris Pistolet. Went off at like 30-1. And of course, the storybook wins the race. There's, 50 people in the winner's circle, high five. And I happened to have probably, $20 to win in place and, felt like I was on top of the world. And so I was like, that's different and pretty exciting. And I think I'd like to try to, get around that again. So a good friend of mine that I graduated from high school with in Oldham County outside of Louisville, Bill Denzik, he was training a few horses. We got reconnected. I bought a few horses with him. Even before that, I actually bought a few horses with a guy named Danny Hutt, who was one of my dear, dear friends. Unfortunately, had a heart attack and left us way too early. But then as you get in and around this type of thing, I mean, you guys know that's why you're on this podcast. This stuff gets in your blood. There's just no other way to say it.
Very interesting. Brook, didn't you also, because I remember I've interviewed you a couple times, what's your background in the bourbon industry?
Yeah, I mean, again, it's kind of like, I say this a lot, but, Save Ferris. I should have never watched that movie when I was in middle school, but Ferris Bueller's Day Off. But you're in Kentucky and you want to get in the middle of something that's interesting. That generally doesn't mean it's a great business, but fortunately, bourbon's booming. And I had an opportunity to buy into Castle and Key Distillery there in Frankfurt. Still own a small piece of that. And then was involved in a few other bourbon brands, a brand called Barrel Bourbon that's highly acclaimed and good folks there, buying some barrels and kind of acting as a middleman here and there. So in and around bourbon. And, the short version is, a nice bourbon neat ain't so bad.
Well, tell us a little bit now about your experience on Saturday. How did you feel going into the Risen Star with Sierra Leone and Hall of Fame? And what was that whole experience like?
Well, I mean, it was a long time between the Remsen and the Risen Star, as you can imagine. So there was a lot of conjecture and, how good is Sierra Leone and this crazy move that the horse made from the back of the field and then Hall of Fame coming right off a bomber maiden victory at the track. It was surreal. Like Caton was asking me a question or two in the paddock, and I just kind of got tongue-tied because I didn't really know what to say. I mean, what can you say when you have, a couple of the top 10 Derby contenders going in a prep race? It was great because I was around all the folks that I know from Coolmore, also had some other friends, and my two youngest sons were with me. So even though the wind was blowing, the rain was blowing a bit sideways, it was just surreal, amazing. And then to have Sierra Leone kind of run the same type of race, impressive considering all the slow fractions and coming through the mud and all that. It's just, I mean, again, I usually have watched these types of moments on TV, but to be a part of one, you don't quite know what to think, to be honest. But it's exciting. And I think Sierra Leone's a type of horse that could develop a following because of the running style and those types of things.
So, Brook, what you do with your earnings is very commendable. For anything that you make on the racetrack, you donate a percentage to the Backside Learning Center Purses for a Purpose program at Churchill Downs. Tell us about that program, what it does, and why you decided to get on board as a benefactor.
Well, I mean, anything that I ever do, because, again, I feel like I'm on extended play, to be honest, just have had some good fortune and had a lot of great, amazing people around me. But it has to have some kind of a mankind or social component to it. I mean, what's the point otherwise? So as I started learning more about the Backside Learning Center, I say this a lot when people ask me about it, but the Backside Learning Center is the backbone of the industry. Those are the workers that get up early and it's tough. It's tough duty. But again, they have the business and the industry in their blood. And the budget that the Backside Learning Center has had is kind of anemic considering, all the money that flows through the industry. So when I sat down with Sherry Stanley and a few of the folks there, I said, there's got to be a program where, these owners, they should contribute a percentage of their purses to, elevate the foundation of the business and take care of these folks that are out there every day, taking care of their horses, sacrificing that with their families. And so as I was looking at kind of what the Backside Learning Center's programming is and how they ran their nonprofit, I thought, wow, this deserves a few more logs on the fire. So we came up with this Purses for a Purpose. Owners can contribute, 1% of their purses or 1% of their win purses. I decided that I was going to, contribute 10% of any purse that I won through Rocket Ship Racing or otherwise. And, the budget's increased. There's been a lot of great programming done. I wouldn't be surprised to see them in a new building in the next year or two that really will help their population. So, that is horse racing, the backside.
Oh, that's really commendable. And obviously we all hope there's a lot more left with to be made with Sierra Leone and Hall of Fame. On that topic, I mean, you've been around racing, you said 15 or 20 years. Now you've got a horse that's Kentucky Derby quality. How do you keep yourself on your feet on the ground between now and the Bluegrass and the Kentucky Derby?
Great question. Maybe you let yourself revel in the moment like 10 or 15 minutes a day, because otherwise you won't get anything done, I guess. I'd say just like great things in life, even things that are a challenge, I think you have to keep them in perspective. I used to hate this saying, don't let your highs get too high or your lows get too low. But as long as you have trajectory, right, that's not the worst thing in the world. So we all know, everybody on this podcast knows that these things can change in a step. So just hopeful that the horse stays sound and healthy. He seems the type, but again, knock on wood. And then, allow that mind to kind of think about what could be. It's pretty tough when everybody in the world's texting you about it. That's one thing I'd have to say. Not a bad problem. I never had somebody texting my phone after that race. But yeah, and have fun. Just have fun with it. Enjoy it. Use the opportunity maybe to get the voice for places like Persons for a Purpose and maybe a few other nonprofits that, and then just, it's not like coveting the moment, but reveling in it. And reveling in it with everybody that's reveling in it. Not, oh, wow, I own part of this horse.
Brook, now that you've tasted this amount of success, whether you win the Kentucky Derby or not, you're already on a great ride with having won the race at the fairgrounds, and, you're the favorite in the Kentucky Derby future wager. Now that you've got a taste for this, do you think this is something you'll start pursuing? Will you go to the sales with partners and look for horses that might have the pedigree and the ability to get into the Kentucky Derby? Do you have, as they say now, Kentucky Derby fever?
No, I had it a long time ago. I guess I know I can at least point to the symptom of it. But absolutely, it's worked great with Coolmore. I love how they operate. Amazing folks, very disciplined. And as I've said to them, whatever happens here will be kind of a parlay in a sense. If there's great success and there's some financial outcomes, then, that'll be the seat for the next kind of journey back to some of these sales and own bits and parts and pieces of some of these potentially great horses.
So we know Sierra Leone, the plan right now is for him to run in the Bluegrass Stakes for his next start. What about Hall of Fame? How did he come back out of that race? I know it was a little bit of a different experience for him in his second lifetime start, down on the inside, got a little keen at one point early in the race. Tell us about how he's doing and what might be next for him.
Yeah, actually the first thing that I thought about after Sierra Leone was crossing the finish line was, I hope Hall of Fame's okay. Didn't run the greatest race at top of the stretch, kind of flared out coming off the turn. I thought, well, here we go. But he'd been kind of weaving in and out, probably not the greatest trip, not to make excuses. And I don't know how many horses could get out there in that cold, wet, windy, dark slop, to be honest. And several of them in the race, I think, will probably, as we say, throw that race out. There's a few others in there that I think will come back and be more formidable. I think, he's one that, again, you got to trust the trainers and the connections and just say, hey, what do you think? Is he still on the track to Louisiana Derby? I guess time will tell. Or is there another route he can go? I think after the next few days, we'll get a sense. I don't feel like he came out of the race in any bad form. But as you all know, a horse that goes through something like that, there's only so many squeezes in a lemon.
Brook, either last year or the year before, I don't remember, but as again, part of your charitable endeavors, you made a large future wager on a horse in the Kentucky Derby. That year you didn't have a horse in there and you were going to donate the profits to the Backstretch Learning Center. That didn't work out. The horse didn't win. Might you do something similar with Sierra Leone?
Well, yeah, beyond a 10% of the purses, which could be formidable. I'm sure I'll be digging in my pocket a little bit deeper for a Backside Learning Center. I have snuck a few future wagers in there along the way. But absolutely anything's on the table. I'm no Mattress Mac, I can tell you that. And I don't know where Bourbon Brook came from, but it's kind of fun to kind of shoulder up with him. Great stuff he's doing. And so, we'll see. I'm looking forward to the handicapping seminar that the Backside Learning Center sponsors. I can't remember the date this year, but it's usually a few weeks out from the Derby.
Oh, Brook, thank you. And thank you for what you're doing for the Backside Learning Center. I know these charities are very important. Like you said, let's take good care of the people that take good care of our horses. Good luck with Sierra Leone and Hall of Fame on the road to the Kentucky Derby. And we'll maybe catch up with you again after the Derby, see how things are.
You never know. You always take a risk if you stick a microphone in my face.
All right. Brook, thanks so much for joining us today.
Yeah, have a great one.
As this week's Green Group Guest of the Week, Brook T. Smith will receive a free 1-hour tax consultation from Lynn Green and Company at the Green Group. For more information on how the Green Group might be able to help you with your taxes and save you a little bit of this, log on to www.greenco.com.
Are you paying too much in taxes? The Green Group can help. There's a reason the most successful owners, breeders, and horsemen select the Green Group as their tax advisors. They save you money and share successful strategies. Over the past 40 years, the Green Group founder, Len Green, has owned and bred some of the best racehorses in the history of the sport, like Eclipse Award-winning champions Jaywalk and Wonder Wheel. His DJ stable competes at the highest level and has received the game's most prestigious honors. Len Green's in-depth, hands-on industry knowledge, combined with cutting-edge tax-saving strategies, has produced positive results for his clientele and has made the Green Group the top-rated accounting and tax firm in the thoroughbred business. For a confidential and complimentary consultation, contact us at 732-634-5100 or visit our website at www.greenco.com. The Green Group, proven strategies to save you taxes.
In this week's edition of First Things First, I did not catch up with the Corgis. I am wearing the t-shirt though. Maybe we'll get to show the Corgi National Finals next week, but I actually did catch up with Craig Lewis to talk about the brilliant Calbred, the recently retired Brickhouse Ride. All right, let's talk about your old stalwart Brickyard Ride. Now 7 years old, you just retired him. He won 13 of 31 starts. Tell us a little bit about this brilliant Calbred of yours.
Well, as everybody knows, he had wicked speed, and he stuck around for a long time. I first got him when he was 2. He's being retired at 7, and he just was a whole lot of fun to train, and we're going to miss him.
What was one of his biggest assets?
Speed, and he loved to train, and he loved the competition. Just like his daddy, probably the best stud in California now, Clubhouse Ride.
Now, Clubhouse Ride's been on a tear of late right here at Santa Anita. He had at least 2 winners this past Thursday. You trained him. Like, what does it feel for you to have all of these horses going through your program and then going on to the breeding shed?
It's great. Couldn't feel more fortunate. He was a very good racehorse. He won $1.3 million, and he appears to be even a better stud. I looked at his stats yesterday. He's currently the leading stud in California, and already at the Santa Anita meet, he's had 11 winners, and more to come, I'm sure.
And what are the plans for his son Brickyard Ride moving forward now?
Brickyard Ride is, as I stated, retired. He's going to get the rest of the year off, which is well deserved because he laid it down every time he ran. And then he's going to go to stud. A lot of interest in him from various places throughout the country, so no final determination has been made yet as to what farm or what state he will even end up standing in.
Oh, so I just assumed he was going to be a Calbred sire.
Don't know. People are very interested in him. And people are very interested in his sire, Clubhouse Ride.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Brickyard Ride, what was one of his favorite races that he won for you? One of your favorites?
Well, I really enjoyed the San Carlos because that was 7/8, and at the time, several people thought that he couldn't go that far, but he was brilliant that day, won the race pretty easily, and subsequent to that, he even was able to negotiate 2 turns, won a stake at 2 turns, and competed against graded horses at 2 turns. So he was very, very talented horse. Fortunate he came my way.
Wishing you the best of luck.
Thank you.
Do want to remind you that while it is still raining here in Southern California, it will stop very soon indeed. And racing will continue on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday with a 12:30 post time. We will see you then.
This week's Derby prep action will take us to Oaklawn Park, where the Rebel Bodies purses at Oaklawn, unbelievable. A grade 2 purse of $1,250,000. That's for the colts heading to the Kentucky Derby. The Honeybee is the prep for 3-year-old fillies on their way to the Kentucky Oaks. A couple of things that I noticed right off the bat about this race. Last week, we were talking about the Risen Star being just loaded. And usually the trainers that are racing at fairgrounds will look at Oaklawn, and the Oaklawn trainers will look at fairgrounds. This race did not come up that tough, and it has a much bigger purse than the Risen Star, which I think just goes to show you how popular that New Orleans route to the Kentucky Derby has suddenly become, with so many top horses vying in that race last week, where, again, a much better race. Randy, you mentioned earlier, Timberlake was a horse that you were a little bit interested in. I guess he'll be the favorite. He won the Champagne at grade 1, didn't run great in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile, where he ran 4th, but if he runs back to his best start in the Champagne, he should be tough. So I want to ask you a question. Where is Muth? Wasn't he supposed to run in this?
I think that may be a reason that we just have kind of 12 horses plus Timberlake, because Hall of Famer Bob Baffert doesn't go to the fairgrounds for prep races. He was pointing Muth to here. He actually worked on Sunday. Now, if you look at the work on XBTV, the work looks good. Muth is a little bit keen. He's a little bit just running through the bridle, running a little bit free. And I asked Bob, I said, why didn't you go? And he said there was an incident on the racetrack. They broke off at the half-mile pole. The sirens went off. The rider pulled him up at the quarter pole. Then they had to wait. They brought the harrows back out. They had to wait even longer, and he just got really riled off and pretty much ran off at the beginning of the work. And when they got to the wire, Bob just told his rider, just take him home, pull him up. There was no mile-long gallop out. And he said he was not happy with that work to put him on the plane and send him. So that's the reason why Muth is not there.
Yeah, and his presence will definitely, his absence will definitely be felt in the Rebel. Look, I mean, we've talked about Oaklawn and how they reinvest their casino money in horse racing more than any other track in America. Just look at the purses for a race like this. But, I mean, at this point, $1.3 million for the Rebel, they may need to reconsider how much they're putting into a race like this, because you got 13 horses in the race. 12 of them made their most recent starts at Oaklawn. The only horse they got that didn't make his most recent start at Oaklawn was Timberlake, trained by Brad Cox, who has a big stable at Oaklawn. And Brad has been saying right from day one that this is the race that Timberlake was going to be pointed to. So since Muth didn't come, there's really no other horse out there that $1.3 million was able to attract, which is mind-blowing when you think about, how much money is being put into a race like this. Timberlake is 6-5 in the morning line. He may even go off a little bit less than that. This race didn't even get the best horse at Oaklawn, which is Mystic Dan, who won the Southwest Stakes by 8 lengths with a 101 Beyer speed figure. And the decision was made to skip the Rebel for Mystic Dan, despite the $1.3 million, and just point him directly for the Arkansas Derby. So in the absence of Mystic Dan, you've got Timberlake that's probably going to be 4-5 or even money. And you've got Just Steel, trained by Wayne Lucas, who was right behind, a long way behind, but behind Mystic Dan in the Southwest, is really the two horses to me that kind of stick out on paper.
I think it really just goes to prove Bill's point when we were talking about the Derby. Now the purse has been up to $5 million. Bill put his hands up and said, listen, if the Derby was $100,000, people would still run in it. I think the fact that it's worth so many points, right? And they all thought that Bob was bringing Muth or one of his giants, and they're not going to garner those points. People didn't get on the plane when they thought Bob was going because they need the points. They don't care about the money. Now, D. Wayne Lucas cares about the money, and he's got Just Steel's going to dance probably every single dance and have to be just steel leading up to the first Saturday in May. So he's in there and everyone else is in there, but you're not garnering those magical horses because the points are oh so important at this time of the year. And everyone knows that Bob sends his horses, his good ones, to Oaklawn.
The other big action in horse racing this weekend, of course, will be taking place in Saudi Arabia, where we have the Saudi Cup, $20 million. Talk about staggering amounts of money, $20 million. And that was enough to get people to run for sure. It's interesting. I think we're going to find out who the best horse in America is by running a race in Saudi Arabia, because right now it looks like that's between National Treasure and White Barrio. Maybe even Saudi Crown gets into the mix. And I know Randy Moss has got to be extra excited because both Derma Sotogake and Senor Buscador are in the race. If two Phils hadn't been retired and if he were in this race, then I think Randy wouldn't even know what to do with himself. I haven't had a chance to look at the PPs. It won't be out for a while, but I like National Treasure's race in the Pegasus World Cup enough. I think I probably would pick him over White Barrio, but and it's not a 2-horse race either. You got Derma Sotogake, like I mentioned, a couple other Japanese horses. It's going to be a fantastic horse race, and but again, it's also sad that how it has hurt so many American races. The Big Cap, which is just one of the great historic races in the history of American racing, is obviously not what it used to be, and this is the reason why.
Yeah, I mean, this is just a sensational race on paper, Zoe, but the racing surface at Saudi Arabia can be pretty quirky, and so you don't always get the most formful race, but it sure is interesting on paper, don't you think?
It's a really interesting race, and people actually been raving over the racetrack over there and the lack of kickback, which makes it conducive to having some turf runners run well on the dirt there. Don't forget Defunded is going to be in there as well. He's already beaten White Barrio and National Treasure. When he's good, he's very, very good. It's going to be a good race, but Bill, you didn't mention your favorite horse. Come on, Bill, the PA bred, Bookham Dano in the Saudi
Dano, of course. No, not PA bred, Jersey bred,
Jersey bred, sorry.
Yes, he'll be going in the Saudi Derby, Bookham Dano. And I don't think he's a Kentucky Derby horse, but good management. They can go over there and will be the biggest win for a Jersey bred since Open Mind won one of the Breeders' Cup races. So my poor Jersey bred program, they're doing their best with a lot of obstacles in their way. But yeah, let's go get him, Bookham Dano.
So you got the J horse, you got the Jersey horse, but then you got the Japanese horses as well. I mean, there's more than just Derma Sotogake, as you pointed out. He was a really good second, obviously, in the Breeders' Cup Classic behind White Barrio. But he's not even the top-ranked Japanese dirt horse. That would be a horse called Lemon Pop, who is going to be in the Saudi Cup as well. He won the Champions Cup last year in Japan. So the Japanese have dominated in recent years in some of these races in Saudi Arabia. So they're going to be pretty formidable. Not just Derma Sotogake, but Lemon Pop as well.
Ushba Tesoro. Him too.
Yes. There you go.
Yes.
Dubai World Cup.
I want to remind you that each and every week, the TDN is brought to you by XBTV, and this week's Work of the Week is NISO along with Windstock. As we watch them go around here, NISOS is on the outside of Windstock. This is past Saturday for Hall of Famer Bob Baffert. NISOS, of course, was the dominant winner of the Robert F. Lewis Stakes in his last start, and Windstock took down the Los Al Futurity. Now, things didn't go his way when Windstock shipped to the Southwest Stakes at Oaklawn, but looks like he's coming back, but probably doesn't need to work with NISOS in the future. But nevertheless, an extremely good work by NISOS, and we'll have to see where he shows up next for Bob Baffert.
all the thrills. Fraction of the bills. Experience the power of the partnership. Change your life, make new friends, and compete at the highest level of thoroughbred racing. West Point Thoroughbreds, the gold standard in racing partnerships. Visit westpointtb.com.
TDN Riders Room also brought to you by West Point Thoroughbreds. West Point's Jackson Traveler won the Bob Thomas Memorial. That was on the Sunland Derby undercard at Sunland Park Sunday. And this is pretty cool. Jackson Traveler has now been a stakes winner at ages 2, 3, 4, 5, and now 6 for Hall of Fame trainer Steve Asmussen. West Point and Bloodstock advisor David and Gordo found Jackson Traveler at the OBS April sale of 2-year-olds in training way back when, 2020. They got him for $140,000, and Jackson Traveler has now earned a touch more than $741,000. If you're interested in getting in on all of this with West Point and vaulting into the world of instant camaraderie, visit westpointtb.com.
Well, that's a wrap on this week's show. I want to thank my partners, Randy Moss and Zoe Cabin. And Randy, they'll be in a little bit extra in your paycheck for getting up at 5 in the morning in Hawaii to do this with us. You're dedicated. That's terrific stuff. So also want to thank our Green Group guests of the week, Brook Smith, our producers, Katie Petruniak and Anthony LaRocca, and also our editors, Aaliyah LaRocca and Nathan Wilkinson. Should be a great weekend of racing, folks. Enjoy the races at Oakland. Enjoy the Saudi Cup. We'll check in with you next week.